Hello. You will notice again, there are three of us on this episode, and we're very, very thrilled, very excited to be joined by Anya Bergman, who we're just in awe of. She blends meticulous research with like spellbinding storytelling, and she's author of Witches of Vardo. You see a poster right behind her head there, and also here we go, Tarot Reader of Versailles, which is like an intrigue,
Beautiful.
mysticism, glittering world of the French court is just like, I mean, not only is it beautiful looking, it's just a beautiful read as well. So we're super excited to be talking to you. So very
thank you.
welcome, Anya. Thank you for joining us on our podcast today.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm really excited to be here.
Thank you. Well, first of all, we wanted to talk about how beautiful this book is because it's pink and green, which is obviously history magnet colours, but it's so pretty. There are not enough pink books.
No.
So first of all, that's brilliant. And I saw the advert for the paperback version of the Tarot Reader of Versailles with the picture. I'm going to have to get that as well because that's so pretty. So yes, that's lovely.
I'm very excited about the paperback cover as well. I mean, I love the hardback cover. I think it's absolutely stunning.
Yeah.
And yeah, I agree with you. I love the tones, the colours in it. And I actually had a really amazing experience at an event in Dublin that I did last year. And I was reading tarot cards for people. And this lady came along who knew nothing about the book, had never seen the cover. And she was wearing a shirt, the colour of the cover. And she had a belt with the buckle was the blue fleur-de-lis.
Wow.
I know.
She
We
dressed
were
up
both
as
a
your
bit blown
cover.
away. Yeah, very strange. So she was meant to be there that day.
Yeah.
But yes, so the paperback cover is of the two characters, Mademoiselle Lenormand and Caitlin Malloy, in their 18th century attire, very different attire. Yeah, so I'm quite excited about that cover. And apparently, I just found out there's going to be a special indie bookshop edition with like red, what's it called when I've lost my words. When the pages are red, you know, the red.
Yes.
The splayed edges.
Yes,
That's it. Sorry.
Oh, I'll be looking out for that.
Yes, yeah.
Only in indie bookshops, did you say?
It's a special indie bookshop edition that they're bringing out as
Go down
well.
to my one.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Good.
Amazing.
With red sprayed edges. That's what I meant to say.
Splayed. So because I met you at the Haunted Bookshop in Bristol a few weeks ago after hounding you on Instagram because I started reading this and I did put it on our Instagram page. I started reading this and it's been a little while since there was a novel I'd read that I was like, I couldn't put down and I couldn't put this down. And I think I kept messaging you after every like chapter going, oh my God, that was amazing. And because you'd messaged back, that was it. You couldn't get rid of me. And then you told me that you were going to be in Bristol. So I came along and met you at the Haunted Bookshop, which is an amazing place to be as well. And I was telling Becky about the fact that it was a bit different, the book reading, because you were doing readings from the book, but you have Lizzie Campbell, who is a friend of yours, singing beautiful, beautiful songs, and also Rara Tarot talking about the tarot cards themselves. So it was amazing. So what a brilliant way.
I'm sad I missed it.
Yeah, we wanted to do something special and different because often kind of book events can be a little bit dry, you know, with all the interviews. Not that they're not interesting. And so Lizzie and I have known each other quite a while and she's an incredible singer-songwriter. And so she's been creating music inspired by the witch wound and stories of female agency. And we just thought we'd love to do something together. And then we also are friends with Rara Tarot, who's based in the Haunted Bookshop in Bristol. And we had this idea to kind of use the different tarot cards that are thematic components of the book as kind of prompts for talking about the book and for Lizzie's songs. And we'd like to do that elsewhere as well. We're looking for other bookshops and bigger venues to do that because it's something different.
It was brilliant. And Lizzie was talking about keening. It's horrible to say, but it's a wailing, a mourning, and with song. And she was talking about the sort of Gaelic traditions of having almost a professional woman to mourn at funerals and things. And way of, is wailing the right word?
Yeah, I think, or keening, like wailing or keeling or lamenting. I mean, that is very much a part of, I mean, Lizzie's Scottish, and that's an important part of Scottish culture and also Irish culture. And I'm Irish, like it is, honouring the dead. And yes, this idea of there were professional keeners as well,
Yeah, so it was really atmospheric. So it
Mm,
was just a fantastic thing to do. I don't know if shall we talk about, do you want to do The Witches of Vardo first? Can we talk to you a little
Yeah,
bit about that
hang
first?
on.
And then
I
the,
I'm absolutely like I loved it. Loved it. And I've just been quite often we have had this conversation before, Kelly and I, about names and stuff like that and pronunciations. And when you're reading a book, for me, I have to know the exact pronunciation so I can actually kind of get it in my head. And sometimes I get a bit stuck on it. So I actually did the audible version of your book, and which
what?
was absolutely, I felt, for me, brought it alive more in a sense. And so not only was the storytelling brilliant, but because the actor, I can't for the life of me remember her name, so I have apologies for that. I'll tag her when we do this. But she was just amazing. And it really did bring the whole thing alive. But I kind of wanted to ask you, what drew you to, those harrowing witch trials of the 17th
Yeah.
century? Like what was it about that? And was it, because I believe you lived in Norway for a little bit. Were you in Norway and that kind of inspired you, or was it the other way around?
Well, I moved to Norway because I wanted to write a book there, but actually The Witches of Vardo is not the book that I originally was going to write. And that book actually was written, but actually I never got it published. So, and it was a completely different genre. But then when I was living in Norway, I came across the story of the witch trials up on Vard, the island of Vardo above the Arctic. And I'd always been interested in the history of witch hunts and witch trials. And it had been something that's always been kind of in the back of my mind since I was a child or a young girl, this awareness of this atrocity that had occurred in
Yeah.
modern history that certainly when I was a child and at school, I still don't think it's on the school curriculum properly, you know,
No.
and it spans 350 years and thousands of people were persecuted, predominantly women, about 85% were women, in all countries in modern
Yeah.
Europe. But what was interesting to me about the Norwegian story was that for the proportion of population there, it was one of the worst kind of witch hunts
Okay.
per capita. Apart from, actually worse than that was central Germany and Scotland. Scotland was horrific as well. And there's actually, if you kind of go into it, there's a lot of historic links between what happened in Norway and Scotland, which I can talk about if you
Oh,
want, if you're interested in knowing about. But just to give the context of why I wrote about this. So I found out about these witch trials in northern Norway, and then I discovered that the trial records still existed. I couldn't believe it. And moreover, because they're written in Old Norwegian and like I can't really speak, I mean, my contemporary Norwegian is pretty poor, let alone Old Norwegian. But they have been translated into English and compiled in a book by an amazing academic called Professor Liv Ellen Williamson. And she'd had them translated by a woman called Katanya Edvardsen. And so I got this book and started reading records, and the women just called to me. It's as
Yeah.
simple as that. I started reading their testimony, their confessions, reading between the lines of what the stories they were telling. And I just felt very connected to them. And I felt a responsibility to raise their voices again. And so that was the beginning of it. And it was a very long journey. I started working on that book in around 2011, and it wasn't published till 2023.
wow.
It was a
That is
very
a
long
labor of
journey.
love.
It was a very
Yeah.
yeah, there was a lot. It was quite interesting. There were a lot of roadblocks along the way, which makes me think, what was at play here?
Yeah.
And there were points when I wrote many different versions of it. I mean, the first draft was about 500 pages, if not longer, long because I decided to write about the witch panic of 1662, 1663. And during those series of trials, 20 women were executed or died under torture. And so I felt that I had to write each woman's story. And of course, that made it very long and also kind of unreadable for someone who wants to just
No.
read a novel. But I had to do it. And then once I'd done that, I was like, okay, now I have to work out how to tell this as a story. So that took a while. It took many iterations. My agent sent out a version of it in 2016, and she was told people weren't interested in reading novels about witches. It was just before the
Who
craze
did she send that to?
of witch. I know,
Should
it
have
was
sent it to us too. We would have.
Yeah.
very strange. Then, but then the following year, some books started getting deals, and so I decided to turn it into a play. So I actually turned it into a play, and I put it on as a play in Edinburgh to sold out houses. And then during the pandemic, I tackled it again and I rewrote it 2 more times. And the last time I got it right. I think I got it right.
Yeah.
And it
But
finally, the
you were
penny
happy.
dropped. The
You
penny
were
dropped.
happy with your last version. You weren't like, I could go again, or were you?
No, it was,
So for you,
it was right. And the
fun.
reason that the element that was missing was, it's a horrific story. It's hard for people to digest. And what was missing was actually the thread of magic realism through it, because I realized that I could still be historically authentic, still raise the voices of these real women, but by bringing in the seam of fabulism, I gave them more agency and I made it more empowering for the reader as well. I didn't, do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
What I wanted people to feel at the end of the book was not completely devastated and traumatized. I wanted them to be angry, actually. I wanted people to feel, without saying a swear word,
No, you can.
whatever, the patriarchy. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I wanted there to be this sense of fury and activation. So that's the story behind it.
Oh, that's great. We're sad. So with the Witches of Vardo, the play, that's no longer running anywhere, or do you bring it out every
Well, I mean,
festival? Or
Witches
will
Get,
go.
it's called Witches Get. So it's changed a lot since then. The story has changed a lot. So I feel if I was to have it, if it was to be a play, again, I would have to change elements. It was kind of part of its work in progress. And also producing a play is even more a labor of love than writing a novel.
Gosh.
There really is no money in it.
So you started at the deep ends completely
But
with that. Yeah.
I would say there is at the moment there is film producer who has the rights, and they're out there trying to get a TV series going.
Because I thought that actually when I was listening, and I thought this would be great. So yes, I'm going to manifest that. That needs to happen.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
trying to get that to happen. They're an
can tell.
amazing producer who has really, I'm not going to say any names because I don't think I'm supposed to, but they've really resonated deeply with it, and I really trust them and believe in them. So I'm really hopeful that they'll find the right place to commission it,
Yeah.
and that will happen, fingers crossed.
Well, that would be incredible.
Very exciting.
I think what we absolutely love about your work is how atmospheric and how you just a few simple sentences, how you compose them, you can literally be time warped in it, and you feel it. I can feel waves crashing around on the island and the gloom and the cobwebs, and especially like when you talk about when Anna first gets to the little dark room that she's going to be in. Just that in itself was, you can feel it. And with the tarot reader as well, the life that you brought of Paris and the streets and what was going on in the revolution at that time. It's so vivid. Your way of describing things is superb. So you just feel like you're in there. So having something then on screen, I mean, it's your baby, so you're going to be really, it will, I'm sure you won't see it through the eyes of the viewer, because you'll be looking at all the things that you wish they'd included or not included.
I kind of I love creative collaborations when you see what someone else does with your work. I love that. And what you see what the director will do or what the actors do, or I think it's a wonderful thing to release it and trust. So I think that's really exciting. So I don't think I'm particularly precious or possessive. I hope not. But yeah, I mean, in terms of the settings, for me, what's really important is to go to the places, even if you're going there hundreds of years later. So I did spend quite a bit of time up above the Arctic Circle in Norway, up on the island of Vardo. And really, when you're there, and you're there it was actually this time of year I was there one time, and it's 24 hours darkness and you're in a snow blizzard. It's not that hard to imagine what it's like. It's really not that hard. And I did the mountain that I mentioned in the book and the caves where they believe the devil lives.
Yeah.
Well, I did find those caves,
Yeah.
And so it really wasn't, because it's such a remote place. It really wasn't actually that hard. And because I've been living in Norway for years, I think I just had this sense of the climate and the how powerful nature is there,
Yeah.
So it was in deep in me. And the same with Paris, that I've been to Paris many, many, many times. But then I went on concerted research trips and I spent a lot of time in Versailles. I went on a very expensive, a kind of small group tour of the Marie Antoinette's hidden private rooms, which I would recommend. And you get a fancy tea at the end, very Versailles tea with little cakes and hot chocolate in a silver teapot. It's very French. And yeah, that was wonderful. And it was a real kind of insight into who Marie Antoinette really was, because these private rooms were very small and little warrens of corridors, and they were kind of done up like with little rosebud prints, a bit Laura Ashley-ish, and kind of gave me a sense of who she was, So I love settings. Setting is important. But also I feel like the time periods that I write about, I've always kind of feel fascination or affinity with. And I'm not sure, I don't know whether that, maybe even if one believed in past lives, maybe one has actually been there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, when talking about the tarot reader, how did you know about Lenormand? I'm not very good with my pronunciation. Lenormand. How did you know about her? Because she's a real life person who's so fascinating, and you only talk about her for a few years of her life, really. And
Yes.
she lived this long, successful life. And how did you find out about her? She's an amazing woman.
Yeah, I mean, that was an absolute gift, discovering her. So I started off with the idea that I wanted to write a story set during the French Revolution, and about kind of this concept of past memories, shifting into past memories to find solace, because I'd read this. Actually, it's not even in the novel, but I'd read this book about these two women in the early 20th century who'd gone to Versailles and felt they encountered Marie Antoinette and encountered her kind of time traveling into a memory. And so there was this kind of metaphysical beginning to the book, and this fascination, which I've always been fascinated with the French Revolution and Marie Antoinette. But then I also read tarot cards, and have read tarot cards for decades. And I came across the Lenormand deck of tarot cards. Well, they're not tarot cards, they're special oracle cards.
Yeah.
And I looked at this, I looked her up, and I couldn't believe it. I was like, oh my God, this was a real person who began, their life as a reader in the French Revolution. Now, those oracle cards, she didn't create them. They were named after her after she died, kind of in honor of her. So she wouldn't have been using them. But then when I started researching tarot in 18th century France, it's absolutely fascinating. And it's kind of the roots of where the divinatory purpose of or use of tarot first began. So, I mean, tarot being used before that, but it's games, storytelling games during the Renaissance in Italy and things like that. So yeah, I kind of brought together those elements, and a lot is known about her later life. I mean, she was great friends with Empress Josephine, and very notorious tarot reader. A lot of people, usually men, are very mean about her, say she's like ugly as a toad and things like that, and that she's a charlatan and things like this. But she does come up with incredible, predictions. And it's documented that she did read the tarot for Robespierre and predicted his fall. She read the tarot for Napoleon, depicted his fall, which he didn't like at all. But there's not much about her early life. And when I discovered that she was a poor orphan, then she really is this rags to riches story. And she ended up, when she died, I think she was the richest woman in Paris and had this huge funeral cortege. So I thought, oh my God, this is really interesting. And at a very young age, she opened a bookstore in Paris during the Revolution and had this secret hidden tarot salon in the back, because reading tarot was illegal then. So yeah, I just thought, well, I have to write about her,
And again, you bring that to life. Like, I can literally see her going through the door and with all her ornaments and everything around her to read the cards. And I love the fact that she was reading cards for every side. I mean, in the book, she's obviously a big true believer of the royalists and Marie Antoinette and things, but she was obviously fundamentally a businesswoman trying to make her way at a very difficult time. She was actually talking or doing readings, I mean, at a time where at the turn of a hat, different people were in power and things. She had to be quick on her feet. She would have had to have been completely astute as to what was going on. Or she was extremely naive and just managed to flow through and get through. But I love the fact
I
that you
think
talk
she was
about
astute.
she must have been. The
I
fact
think
that
she's pretty crafty.
she kept being arrested and then she'd be let out because
I mean,
of
because
the
she had the
people that she
secrets of
knew.
powerful
Yeah.
people. So she was
And
quite, you know.
I could just, I just think of her going, well, actually, you know, remember when I read your cards for you? And they'd
Yeah.
be like, oh yes, here you go, let you out again. Like, you really brought all of that to life. You gave her such a personality. She sounded like she would have been so amazing to me and wonderful. And like you said, the rags to riches, she was really young when she first came to Paris and then had set up a shop and a salon and had people coming to her. That was amazing. I mean, how much trouble did she get into, do you think, or do you know? I mean, especially in the French Revolution. I mean, she was
She
in.
did. God, she was in a lot. I mean, I don't want to give away too many spoilers in the novel, but she did get into a very hairy situation. And if the fall of Robespierre hadn't have occurred, she might have met Madame Guillotine for sure.
Wow.
So she was with Josephine,
Yes.
who was documented as they were together, you know. So Josephine
So,
nearly
yes.
met the guillotine, but
So,
you know.
being a huge Marie Antoinette fan, obviously
Yes, I
get
love
her
your
out.
tattoo.
I tattoo of her. I mean, I've always been obsessed. My kids, if they want to piss me off, go, let them eat cake and stuff like that. And
She
they're
never said
all on
that.
my, oh my God, and I just lose my mind. But what I love about your book is you bringing these real life people into it and as the characters. And we talked before when I met you and about Princess Lamballe, who is my favourite because she's such a tragic figure.
I love
Again,
her
not trying
so
to.
much.
I do as well. She is one of my most favourites, and I love the fact that she is very much a big character in your book. And because you're using Lenormand to talk about these people who we know about already, but you put like a humanness, because Marie Antoinette is a queen, but you talk about her as a mum and as a friend and a confidant to people. And I really love that. And how much research did you need to do to look into all these different characters that you brought in? Because you brought in loads, I mean, lots and lots of these, particularly women, amazing women who were in the revolution, and like even talking about Charlotte Corday and things and mentioning their stories. I love how you brought that in, these slices of history at this time where you wouldn't have known if you were coming or going from one day to the next.
Yeah. I mean, I did a lot of research. It was,
Yeah.
it was quite intimidating because when I researched for the Witches of Vardo, as I said, I had the primary source of the trial documents, and I also had the support and help of Professor Lieve Williamson, who was an expert on the trials. But there's not that much written elsewhere, you know. So I felt quite confident about those sources. Whereas with the French Revolution, there is a lot written and lots
A
of
lot of
different
opinions as
interpretations.
well.
Sorry?
A lot of opinions as well about.
Exactly. Lots of different opinions, especially on Marie Antoinette. And I didn't want to, look at her through rose-colored glasses either. I wanted to show her flaws as well. And also what was important, very important to me, was that it was a feminist depiction of the French Revolution, in the sense that my main characters and the cast are predominantly female. The men are there too, but I wanted to show the women involved in the French Revolution because there were so many incredible women, from radicals to, Republican, constitutionalists to royalists. There were so many really interesting, complex women caught up in events. And it was really important that they had their voices raised in the book. So that involved a lot of research. And of course, I'm a novelist, I'm not a historian. So it's not perfect and it's my interpretations. But for instance, what fascinated me about Marie Antoinette was that the aspect of her as a mother, which I think is a little bit overlooked. And that's emphasized a little bit in the novel because
absolutely.
She adopted children and looked after them, and it's documented that one of the last things she was saying before she was executed was her fears for these adopted children who would support them. And then also there was like this incredible escape attempt to County Kerry in Ireland, which is true. I couldn't believe that. And she wouldn't, leave because she didn't want to leave her children. So, she wasn't she gets blamed a lot for the economic troubles that triggered. One of the reasons the French Revolution triggered is many reasons why the French Revolution triggered, but economic hardship was one of them. I mean, the country was in the grip of, famine, starvation. There was the most incredibly awful winter. And so she became a target, and she was a foreigner. She was Austrian.
Yeah.
So people hated her. And the king didn't have a mistress, so they targeted all their hatred at Marie Antoinette. And she became this kind of depiction of a sexual predator. And I think she did have a complex sexuality. And I think Princess Lambelle is completely misrepresented. If you read history books about her, they just say she's kind of pathetic and weedy. And I'm like,
mousy little timid thing.
Yeah. And I'm like, excuse me, she had actually left and didn't have to come back. And Marie Antoinette wrote to her and said, whatever you do, don't come back to Paris, because she was extremely hated. And she did come back out of loyalty to Marie Antoinette. So that's really brave.
I mean, Marie Antoinette had actually some very dedicated friends, and Louise Ambel being the extreme one, I would say. But I love the fact that you talked about these things that we know about in history. Maybe it's quite one-sided, but when you talk about, obviously, in her trial where it's brought up that she molested her son and things like that, and then you tackle that and you talk and you say, they're going to try and turn him against you, your own son, and things like that. And you dealt with that really lovely, because in my, like, what on earth must she have been thinking at that time? It was so desperate. And she's got this poor little boy, and it's just how you've written about it just makes sense. I know we don't know exactly what was going on in her head, but the story the voice you give to her is so authentic, and how I think it would have been. And I just totally loved it. I loved someone being on her side and showing her for her in her true colours. I think much more than anyone else has, or certainly recently. I just loved it.
I mean, I think what's interesting, that whole incident that you're talking about, which she was accused of in her trial, kind of indicates the deep-rooted misogyny that was coming to the fore during the revolution. So at the beginning of the revolution, a lot of women thought that it was going to be good for them too, but this revolution was only for white men. It wasn't for black people, and it wasn't for women, and there were some really kind of hopeful female radicals at the beginning, and they wanted to set up a women's militia. And Olympe de Gouges, hope I pronounced that correctly, she did the Declaration of Rights for Women. But gradually, as the kind of factions started fighting, as those in power became more radicalized, one of the effects of that was to shut down women's opportunities, women's rights, and for this horrible misogyny to seep in. And in her trial, when they accuse her of molesting her son, some of the, hardcore radical women in the crowd, even though they hate Marie Antoinette, are absolutely appalled. At that.
They suddenly are spoken to as women, and they're like, oh, actually, hang on a minute. That's a step too far.
The turning point was really Charlotte Corday, which maybe listeners know about Charlotte Corday, but if they don't, Charlotte Corday assassinated the journalist Marais. There's a very famous painting by David of Marais dead in his bath with a turban on. He was in his bath because he had a terrible skin condition. And so it is true that she killed him in his bath. She was kind of she wasn't suspected because she was so innocent looking, but she had planned this. She kept traveled down from Normandy, I think, and she'd planned this because she blamed him for the terror, the encroaching terror. I mean, she was a kind of more moderate revolutionary, but she was still a revolutionary. So when she was on trial, they couldn't believe that she'd done this on her own. She was a young woman in her early 20s.
Yeah.
And they kept,
So who's behind you? Which man made you do this?
who's found behind you? And it was to the extent that after she was guillotined, they inspected her to see if she was a virgin. I mean, it was a real desecration, you know.
Yeah.
I didn't realise until reading your book, I didn't realise just how much they shut down women. I was under the impression more that it was very much a time where everyone got to explore their freedom and equality. I didn't realise that was only limited to, like you said, white men. And I knew a lot of these salons happened and a lot of the, women's lib was starting, but they were actually shot down very quickly. And like Olympe de Gouges was ended up executed herself because of her stance against Robespierre and things. And I was like, what? I thought this was a movement about equality for everybody. Didn't realise it was only for half the nation of men. And you really brought that home. Realised that everyone was sort of everyone was against each other. You couldn't
Well, they
have
were
turned
all like, it was
anywhere.
changing every day, wasn't it? All the different
Yeah.
factions. One minute, one lot was in power. Next minute, they're being accused of being traitors, and they're off to the guillotine. And yeah.
Yeah. I mean, when the terror happens and they're all in prison, when she's in prison with Rose, who is Josephine, later Josephine married to Napoleon, and she meets that group of women there. And we talked about Mrs. Elliot, who was a Scottish
Yes.
woman who
She's an
was
amazing character. Grace Dalrymple
She's
Elliott.
amazing. And I did, after we talked, I've got her, she actually wrote her memoirs for George
Yes.
IV, I think it was, who asked her because she ended up being in prison. But she was the mistress of the Duc d'Orleans, and who was himself for the rebels and for the revolutions, but ends up with his head taken off. But she is a woman who basically got by being a mistress, ends up in Paris, ends up friends with Marie Antoinette, ends up in prison, and manages to live through it, and then writes her memoirs later on. But
Yeah,
you talk about her, and she's so fascinating. She's like, what are you doing there? You're Scottish woman. How have you got entangled in this? But they're all queuing up, going for their bread or going when they go for a wee and they're talking because they don't know who's on whose side and who's in favour, who's out of favour. Robespierre's fall is so sudden as well. And then it's, well, who's actually in charge? And you want it to be a republic, but you don't want anyone to be in charge, but you want this person to be in charge. I mean, it must have been so frightening if you're an everyday
and I
person.
think, a lot of people might say, well, why was what was this thing about the French mob? Why was it so violent?
Yeah.
But they were absolutely terrified because the narrative, as far as they were concerned, and it really nearly did happen that, and I mean, there's no doubt about it. King Louis and Marie Antoinette were traitors to their country through fear, but they did conspire for the Austrian army to invade. And I think it was the Duke of Brunswick or someone said, when they were coming in, they were going to kill all the people of Paris, the Parisians. So the Parisians definitely did think that they were going to be massacred and they had to get rid of all the counter-revolutionaries. So it was all fueled by panic and fear, the violence. There was context to it. They weren't just gratuitously, willy-nilly kind of, even though it kind of did kind of become a big knock-on effect, panic and terror. It did start with this fear of invasion and being scared that counter-revolutionaries lurking amongst them, would turn. And so that's why everyone kept being accused of being counter-revolutionaries. And why, once Louis and Marie Antoinette were caught after the escape to Varennes, they were doomed.
Like
They'd
the
gone too
worst,
far. They were
the
doomed.
worst escape try ever. That's
Yeah,
all
they
that it
really
sort of
messed that one
touted.
up.
Absolutely. How much do you think sort of, because the newspapers and their caricatures, and you talked about, the rumours that went around and the pamphlets and the news and a lot of fake news going around, what we call today fake news. But, you had pamphlets with caricatures of Marie Antoinette having lesbian romps with pretty much everybody at court, and that really fed into the public's hate. I mean, did you see lots of those sort of things when you were researching? Did you see
Yeah, I mean, there's lots
these
of
stories?
what they were called libelles. And then I mentioned earlier that normally the king's mistress would be the object of derision in libelle, but because Louis didn't have a mistress, then it became Marie Antoinette, and also because she was Austrian, they really did hate her. So they would have her like images of her having sex with remember I can't remember which dukies of whatever, but the Louis brothers. And the thing is that I'm not sure, in my version of the book, I think it's very possible that I think Marie Antoinette maybe had a more fluid sexuality, that I think a lot of people of the era had a fluid sexuality. For instance, again, I'm so sorry, I can't remember the wife of one of the brothers of Louis was known as a lesbian and had an affair with an English woman spy. So there's another great story.
Yeah.
Yeah. But and I can't remember their names. That's terrible. But yeah, so I think, I mean, obviously the famous extramarital affair that Marie Antoinette has is with Axel von Fersen. But I think it's quite possible that she had a fluid sexuality. I think Lambert is even more likely to be queer because she was widowed very young and she should have married again, and she didn't
Yeah,
want
she
to
didn't.
marry.
Yeah,
Yeah,
she didn't
yeah. So
marry.
I mean, I feel quite strongly about queer narratives in historical fiction because I think there were plenty of queer people. They're just not documented as many as there are now, of course. You know,
And
Yeah.
she was totally isolated, Marie Antoinette, especially because her marriage took such a long time to even be physical as well. There's that whole
yeah.
famous that they didn't have sex for ages for whatever reason. Yeah, she was surrounded by women. She would have been. She wouldn't have surrounded herself with men. But I think, yeah, her attachments that she had certainly leave room for you to think that there could have been more to it. Absolutely. And the dedication, the fact that Louisa comes back after being told very clearly, if you come back, you're going to end up being killed.
And
I
like
mean,
Madame Polignac.
yes. Yeah. Yeah. It's she obviously inspired great loyalty and love in people, and that's really clear to see. I just love the fact that you've included all these things. I mean, reading your book, it's like going down a rabbit hole because you want to stop and then go and look up the real people and see whatever else you can find out. And you give us these hints of like Napoleon's wife, Rose, and her husband, and then the fact that when they're all in the prison, they're all, because they don't know when their name is going to be read out to be beheaded, they're all having sex with each other and going off with each other.
Yeah, well, that was true. They were just like, that fine line between sex and death, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
But Um, the other part of your story, you talk about the Great Rebellion, and you have Kate. We haven't talked about Kate, your other main character, who is this fiery, wonderful Irish woman who comes over to Paris and becomes involved with Ellen and has her own sort of powers. What made you bring that part of the story in, using the Irish connections? What made you
I've
do
been
that?
fascinated by the um, Great Rebellion, first of all, and the connection between Ireland and France at that time.
Mm.
And, I've known about the Great Rebellion in 1798 in Ireland for a long time when a French force landed in Ireland, and not many people know about it. So I
No,
like
I
to write
didn't know
about things
anything
that
about
not
it.
many people know about. And there's a lot of kind of Irish families established in France at that time because going right back to the 17th century, because of the introduction of the penal laws in Ireland, when Irish families were not allowed to own property, not even now allowed to own a horse. So a lot of them, the middle class Irish or the landowning Irish, most of them left Ireland. Many of them went to France and established themselves in France, and maybe joined the Royal Army, or maybe went to Austria and joined the Austrian army. And then some of them became involved with the revolutionaries, and they set up a group called the United Irishmen with the hope that they could get French help for this, French Republican help for an Irish revolution.
Yeah.
for Ireland to achieve
Or
what
how it
France
was
had
built up.
achieved. And rather than the downfall of the monarchy, it would be the downfall of the colonial,
Yeah.
empiric power. So that really fascinated me. And because I live most of the time in Kerry in Ireland, it's all around me. The history is all around me. The landscape is there. And so Caitlin just came from that landscape that I live within, of this wild bog, and the idea of the Morrigan kind of, I don't know, calling to her. And I wanted a really powerful love stories within the book, complicated and powerful and sweeping love stories. But what I like the idea about Caitlin is that she follows Riley, who she thinks she's in love with, to Paris, but really she's going because she wants to be part of the independence of Ireland. She loves her country more than anything. She has her duty and her love to Ireland, which surpasses
That
everything.
really shines through.
And that's what, when she comes together with Mademoiselle Lenormand, the two of them become incredibly powerful together, because Lenormand reads the tarot and sees the future, but Caitlin can read palms and see people's pasts. So together they're extraordinarily powerful. And the most frustrating thing for Lenormand is that she cannot see Caitlin's future. She's the only person she can't see her future. So Caitlin isn't a real historical figure. I tried to find a real historical figure of a woman who was a young woman at that time, and there just wasn't one I could find documented. Doesn't mean people like that
there
didn't
probably
exist.
still was.
Yeah.
But I kind of used the inspiration of Wolfe Tone, the Irish rebel Wolfe Tone, and other people at that time to create her character.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It was brilliant. And so obviously a big part is the tarot and the spiritual side of things. And in the book, you have a few spreads which you shared at the Haunted Bookshop were your own ones that you'd put into the book. So, and with a bit of a guide of how to do it for yourself. So what made you put that in? Because that was, I mean, I've got tarot cards. I'm not very good at reading them, but I certainly want to use that as a guide for myself. So what made you put that in? Because that's a brilliant interactive way to get your reader even more into it.
It's that you've just put the nail on the head there. I wanted readers to interact with the novel. And I've read tarot as I mentioned, I've read tarot for many decades professionally. And I've always wanted to integrate tarot into a novel, but I didn't want to use it as a gimmick. I wanted it to be an integral part of it, so that it is it works on many different levels in the book. So I use the Fool's Journey of the Major Arcana to map out the character arc of Lenormand's journey through the novel. And I also I work with tarot cards in my writing practice. So every book I write, I work with tarot cards to create structure, to develop characters. I work with astrology and tarot cards. So every single character in that book is represented by a tarot card. For instance, Marie Antoinette is the Queen of Cups. She's a Scorpio. That already tells me loads about her, if you're into that sort of thing, which I am. And so, so I wanted to do that. But also, I love the idea of people being able to, if they want it, to learn the tarot as they read the story. And so that's why I created the different spreads, which are my own original spreads. And they're inspired by the fact that at that time, tarot readers were obsessed with Egyptian mythology and believed that the tarot came from ancient Egypt. Of course, it didn't. Well, there's no evidence that it did.
Yeah.
But there was a tarot school in Paris at that time, and there were people connecting this ancient mystery system from ancient Egypt to tarot cards. And so that's why those readings have the different Egyptian gods and goddesses and little drawings. And I just love doing things like that in my novels. Like I put folk tales in the Witches of Vardo. I like having these little devices. I think it's fun.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you say that you use the tarot to develop characters and storylines, can you tell us more about that? Or is that secretive or
No, I run workshops on how to do it. I have a little guide, and I just did a workshop recently at the Dingle Literary Festival, and it's called the Storytelling Tarot, and it's how to write books using tarot cards. So I've taught this for years.
Ellie's going to sign up.
I'm just writing it down.
I might do one online soon, actually, because a lot of people have
Yes.
been asking me to do it,
Yes,
and
you
I'm
have
you know
to.
what, I must do that again. I did it quite a bit during the pandemic, the way we all got on
Yeah.
things. So yeah, but there's many. Sometimes I use them just as prompts, or for conceptual development, which is always insightful. But with characters, so each suit in the deck of tarot represents a different element. So your swords is air element, your pentacles is earth, your wands is fire, and your cups is water. So if you connect the energetics, or the elements of those suits with astrological element theories, you could say, so the personality types of, let's say, a fire sign or a water sign, and then you kind of you find out, if you're working with a real historical figure, then you find out their birth dates and what their element is and what their sign is. It really, really helped me create those characters because, Lenormand is a Gemini. She's a
Okay.
Gemini.
Yeah.
She's an air sign. She's a communicator. She's a trickster. Lambelle, Princess Lambelle is a Virgo. I'm a Virgo,
I'm Virgo.
Yeah. Well, we get her, don't we? She's very
Well, I
grounded.
like you both then, isn't it? And that's why I like Lambelle.
What sign are you,
She's
Kelly?
I'm a Sagittarius, a very
So you're
typical one.
fiery. So I think I couldn't find out Grace's birth date, actually, but I think I made her a fire sign. Not sure she's an
Yeah,
Aries or a Sagittarius. I think I made
definitely a
her a
fire
fire
sign.
sign. And her character, I kind of feel she's a fire sign. But yeah, so that's really how I do it. And then looking at I might work with the court cards or with major arcana archetypes with the characters for different aspects of their character. In terms of structuring, I literally will I have a kind of a structuring format. Maybe I'll use 7 cards in kind of an arc that will represent different, the inciting incident, the rising action, the midpoint reveal, the climax, the resolution, and I will pull cards for all of those and they'll bring me
Wow,
insights. Or if I'm really blocked, really stuck in a book, I will actually pull 3 cards for a chapter to help me.
that is so cool. Did you use it as well when you were trying to figure out what to do with your Witches of Vardo story and cutting things
Not
out?
so
Did you
much,
use it
actually. I
there?
did use it a
No.
bit, but not so much. I've been using it more with the Tarot of Versailles. I did use it a bit with the witches, but definitely the Tarot of Versailles, and then the book I'm working on right now, I'm using it with as well.
Well, yes,
That was a bit of a hint. Come on, then, you're gonna have to. This is
Get
a
way
piece,
into
Willie.
it.
You have to tell us.
Yes. So what are you working on now?
I'm kind of stressed. You're not going to think it's and you're going to be like, ooh. Well, my next book is called Marion of Sherwood, and it's a retelling of Marion of Sherwood.
How is
So
that not
this
going to
is
be
a
brilliant?
retelling of Robin Hood. Quite different from the original ballads because, as I like to investigate, I went back to the original source for Marion and Robin, the first
Fab.
source for them, which are 12th century pastoral poems. And the poems are about Marianne, not Robin. He's kind of like a secondary character, but they're all
He's
about
the main
her.
character. She's the main
She's
character.
the main character.
You like that?
Yeah.
And
And
then this boy got
she's a
himself
shepherdess
involved.
as well. She's not a maid, Marion. She's not a lady. She's a
Mm.
she's a regular girl, and she's a clever character. So that she's a trickster. So the book is, of course, Marion is a fictional character, is a mythic character, but my book has within it a cast of women, some of whom were real women in the early
Oh,
13th century England. So I'm setting it against the
fantastic.
backdrop of the civil war between King John, bad King John, who really was bad, and the barons. So,
Yeah.
which is a kind of well-known setting for Robin Hood stories. So I'm using the time of Magna Carta,
Mm.
when people are trying to reclaim the forest. So, there's a group of women outlaws that come together around Marion. And Robin Hood is in the book, and there's a great love story as well, because I couldn't do that to fans of
Not,
Who doesn't
yeah.
love a love story? But yes.
he's in it as well, but the book aims to, I guess the themes of the book are the solidarity of women, toxic masculinity and trying to subvert that whole thing of the chivalrous knight, and then the fragility of the land, of our
Oh,
land, of the
lovely.
woods,
Yeah.
of our relationship with nature and animals, wild animals.
What made you think of Maid Marian as a...
Well, it's funny actually, because my first love has been medieval history. I did a degree in history of art many moons ago, and my specialist area was medieval art. And so I've always been obsessed with the Middle Ages, and loved the Middle Ages and wanted to write a medieval story. But I think it's taken me this long to find the right medieval story that I wanted to write. And at the same time, I've just always been obsessed with Robin and Marion. And I mean, you guys are younger than me probably, but there was a TV series in the 80s.
Oh, yeah.
With the Clannad soundtrack. Did either of you see that?
Yeah. Oh, yes. Yes.
Robin,
was it the one
Robin
with
of Sherwood?
Yeah. Did it
Robin
have Jason Connery in it? Was it Jason Connery one or
Yeah,
whichever
before that
one?
was Michael Praed. Yeah.
Yes,
yeah,
Michael Praed.
yeah.
Yes.
And I was obsessed with that. And I think it was because of the kind of mythic, folkloric, magical aspect. So with this novel, I'm pushing a little bit more into the fantasy realms. There's a lot of real history in it, but there's also a magic system.
Yeah.
There's Arthurian myth within it, because at that time in England, they were obsessed with Arthurian myth.
Romantic.
And romance. And they believed that in the existence of Excalibur and all of this. So I'm leaning into that.
Oh.
So yeah, so I'm working on that right now. And it's supposed to be published next December.
Say no pressure, dear.
Yeah. When are we getting it?
Well, I'm hoping it will be next December, and it's published by Firefinch, which is a new publishing company. So very excited about it.
How does it work with the putting pressure of time on your work? How does that affect you?
I think it's quite good to have a deadline, actually, because sometimes you can just kind of waft along forever. And once I get really into a book, I get really excited and want to write it. I think I do work as well, and I love my job, but it gets quite difficult sometimes when you kind of can get in the way of the flow.
Yeah.
So ideally, one would like a little bit more time, but I think, and I know I have friends or mentees who've been working on books for a long time, and I think part of the problem might be just they don't have a deadline. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So sometimes it's a really good idea to kind of go, you know what, I have to get it done by then.
Yeah. I mean, I always do. I think it's probably a Virgo thing. I don't know. Always my best work right at the very end. And I literally, and it's like, don't give me months, just give me 2 weeks and then I can just do it. And then it's fine. I'm not suggesting a book takes 2 weeks. So apologies for that.
No, but if you're just focusing on writing, it's amazing what you can get done. And I've been really enjoying working on this book, actually.
Good.
I love kind of all the research that I've done, and I've been using the tarot deck I've been using is the Wildwood tarot deck, which was created by John Matthews, who I actually met at the UK Tarot Conference, and he and his wife Caitlin Matthews have written many amazing books on shamanism and Celtic mythologies, and so he's kind of helped me in terms of source material for looking into Arthurian legend, which has been helpful. And then the other person who wrote that deck is, bizarrely, I didn't realize, this guy called Mark Ryan, who was in that original Robin the Hooded Man. He played the character of Nazir. How bizarre is that?
It's bizarre.
So I was like, because that was a very formative experience, that TV series. I remember me and my best friend Kate, we were completely obsessed with it.
Yeah.
And we,
yeah,
that was our week revolved around our episode of Robin the Hooded Man.
I remember
I can almost hear the soundtrack.
I know, it's in my head right now.
I remember the children's programme Maid Marian, do you remember that with Tony Robinson? The
You're definitely younger than us.
I don't remember that because I probably would have been a lot older, and there was a period of time in my life.
I'm 46, and that was, I reckon, late 80s, maybe early 90s.
Yeah, I was at uni being far too busy.
What I loved about it is, so Robin in it is this good-looking guy, but he's just really thick, and she has to basically come in and sort it all out every episode. And brilliant. I loved it because it was like she was the real character. She was the important one, the one who was the proper hero. And I absolutely loved that. And that really stayed with me. And still remember the theme tune and stuff. So not that I'm thinking it's going to be a comedy book that you're writing, but it's just the fact that she came in, she was the one who sorted everything out, and
Yeah.
I absolutely love
As in
that.
life. As in life, it's always the woman that comes
In
in
life,
and
yeah. I
sorts
mean,
everything out.
the narrative of Maid Marian as the kind of damsel in distress character doesn't really come in till I think the 18th century stories of Robin. There's like she appears in these early 12th century poems and then she disappears completely. And the first kind of Robin Hood stories and ballads appear in the late Middle Ages, I think around 14th, 15th century, and she's not in them. And it's not until later on that she's in them, and then she's this Maid Marian, this
Yeah.
this
Totally useless woman who can only do anything
Well,
with.
she's not useless, but she's a lady. No, there are stories of her in disguise and things like that. I think she
Yeah.
does. There's a story of her fighting Robin in disguise as a man and stuff like that. So she's quite bold in the later ones, but she's definitely a noble woman.
Yeah.
So I think that's two. Witches of Varda. We're looking forward to hopefully that coming into a TV
Right.
production anytime soon. We really would love to have Tara Reid of Versailles, and now you're Maid Marian one. I was just like, oh well, I can't wait. Come on, Netflix, whoever.
There's been so many Robin Hood films, haven't there? But I
Yeah,
kind of feel like she's always been overlooked.
she has.
Yeah.
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 She has. I think she'd be an amazing character in her own right. I love the fact, though, that you've now gone down this own rabbit hole of Arthurian legends
Yes.
and stuff,
Yeah,
because
that's
there's
great.
so many amazing things to find out there. You'll need
It's
a
fun.
sequel and prequel and everything.
Well, there's so many books I want to write. I've got so many ideas because there's so many amazing women in the
Yeah.
past. I could go on forever. Like there's so many stories um, that I would love to tell.
Yeah, well, that's why I ended up going and getting the book about Grace Elliott and
Mm.
her thoughts on the French Revolution. And then I want to know everything about Louisa Lambel. There were so many brilliant women in all of the books of yours that I've read, that you could write stories about all of them. It's just,
Yeah, it's exciting when you
what
realize
enough
that they were real
time.
people. Have
Yes,
you ever
yes,
heard of the book Normal Women by Philippa Gregory?
yes.
Astounding. I loved it. It's based on UK history, but it starts in the early Middle Ages and it's stories of normal women. And
Yeah.
you begin to realize that, yeah, there were female warriors, there were women doing all sorts of things. It's just not
It's
documented.
We
just been
spoke to,
silenced across the years.
yeah. Well,
I mean,
we spoke
in the,
to,
oh, sorry,
sorry,
go
go
ahead.
on. No,
No,
I
I
was
was
just
just
going
going
to
to
say,
say in the Marion book, there's a character in it. She's a minor character, but there was a female sheriff of Lincoln.
what's there? Ooh,
And she, not
yeah.
only that, she was a 67-year-old woman.
Love that.
It's just like, rock on.
That's
Yeah.
amazing. That is very cool. Yeah, I was just going to say, we interviewed Lauren Johnson last week, who's just written her book about Margaret Beaufort, who is a favourite of ours as well. And then she was looking at everyday women in the medieval times, and she wrote about this woman who became like a master blacksmith in the Tower of London, and she was widowed and then ended up taking on like the business and had two sons and was training them and apprenticed them. And you think, bloody brilliant. Those are the stories I want to hear
Yeah.
about.
Yeah.
These guys who do stuff and sort it out. And
I mean, I'm not sure when that was. I do know that the Black Death changed a lot of things for
Yeah.
women
Yeah.
because
yeah,
of the population drop and, that there weren't enough men. So they allowed women in the guilds and things like that.
yeah, yeah. And we were talking in our last podcast about Lucretia, the medieval Jewish lady in England who ended up was widowed and then took on the family business of money lending. And was it Henry II that she was lending money
No,
to?
Yeah.
actually, so you're talking about Lucretia from
Yeah.
Winchester.
Yes.
She's in
Yeah.
my Marion novel.
Oh my God, I love her. I love her so much. I love her.
She's,
She's amazing
as a young
woman.
girl, she's so it would have been the reign of Henry III that she would have
Right.
been. isn't
Yes.
it? But her origins are kind of murky, unknown. So she's in my novel as a 14-year-old girl.
Oh, I love
So
that.
I had the freedom to kind of make up stuff
Well,
there, knowing what's going to
she
happen.
doesn't really come into the history books until she's sort of a widow, really, and
Yeah.
a fully grown woman and mother of grown up children. But I heard about her, and then I wanted to read all about her. And she's another fascinating woman, and ended up being one of the wealthiest sort of women around at that time. Just couldn't own any land because she was a Jewish woman. Yeah, we were talking about that, weren't we, last?
I mean,
Yeah.
her ending wasn't great now, was it?
No. No.
But I mean,
Yeah.
one of the things I wanted to do as well, I'm talking more about Marion and it's not out yet, but I wanted to also show how diverse society was in the Middle Ages in England and how people were moving around a lot more than we realize, what with
Yeah.
pilgrimages, and it wasn't just white people,
Yeah.
Yeah.
white Christians.
Yeah.
It wasn't just white Christians living in England in the Middle Ages.
Well, we cannot wait for that. So yeah, if you could do the deadline for December, that'd be a great Christmas present for me. So I'll tell my husband now
Yeah.
to look out for it. Thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you. Sorry, I know we've kept you longer than we asked for, but we could talk to you all day and all night and all next week. But it's just been such a pleasure having you come and talk to
Yeah.
us.
Thank you
And
so much for your time.
we
I've
urge
really
everyone
enjoyed the
to go.
chat.
Yes, well, we could talk again. We'll have to do a part 2 and 3 and 4
Yes.
in a little while. And come and talk to us when you've done your Maid Marian book. Or not
Yes.
Maid Marian.
Not made.
No,
All made.
no.
Yeah,
Kick
it will
off tonight.
be. Yes. But before you go, are you going to be doing any more book touring? I mean, you've got to do an online tarot storytelling course now for me.
I'm gonna have to do that. At the moment, there's nothing scheduled in, but the paperback's coming out on the 12th of February, so I would like
Okay.
to do some events. So I'm going to have to look into that. But if people want to follow me on Instagram under Anya
Yeah, we
Bergman,
do all the tagging and everything.
yeah, then I will be there'll be a link to events on that.
And
if
you'll
there's
have to get Lizzie and Rara Tarot to come and
Yes, I would love to do that again.
that would
Yes.
be fantastic to come along to see that again. That would be amazing. And then also put on another version of which is a Vardo play. So me and
Yes.
Becky can come and watch that.
I mean,
If you could just do all
let the
these things
poor
first.
woman write first.
That's the problem, isn't it? I'd love
Just
to
go
do
on
all
and
those
on.
things. Yeah.
No, thank you so much for coming and talking to us.
Thanks so
It's been
much. Thank you
such a
both.
pleasure. And thank you for responding to our messages in the first place. That's also we're
It's
very
always so
grateful.
lovely to hear from readers. I'm always very humbled and honoured when people let me know how they
Well,
feel about
my mum's going to be messaging you because this is her
Great.
book club in France. They're all reading this now. So I'll let you know what she thinks.
Fingers crossed they like it.
Of course they will, yes. Yes, we shall let you go, but thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It's been wonderful.
Thank you.
Yeah.